Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and over the last few days I've been making myself some simple styrofoam hills. This is actually XPS high density foam, and the build was so easy I decided it was worth doing a short video on for anyone out there who has any doubts about making their own terrain. So I'm going to make a simple round hill out of this offcut from a previous project. Now this is high density foam, 20mm thick, ideal for the sort of size hills that I want. It cuts really well, it's very firm, you know, you can see I'm pressing at it and it's not denting or anything, but at the same time it's quite easy to work. And I'm going to start by cutting it. Now I will cut a rough circle and then I'll work the edges. Now I'll do one half with the knife and the other half with the wire cutter so you can see the difference. So first things first, I'm going to cut this. Now I'm always going to try and cut away from myself, so I'll use the surface of the table rather than holding it up in the air. And I'll turn the piece around rather than trying to cut at a funny angle, because that's the asking for an accident. That is. And there you go, one rough shape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the edges. So at this end I'm going to use the knife and the other side I'll use the wire cutter. And you can see what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle the knife at about a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to roughly cut around that edge. And I can take more chunks off as I need. Always cutting away from myself for safety. And again, the sharper the blade, the easier this will work. And you can see I've got a rough level. Now you can make that as low an angle as you like, but I like about the 45 degrees, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to round the tops of the edges at the end of the project before I flock it. Take a little bit more off of there. You can see I'm always working away from myself, put the blade away when I'm done, and now I've done one end with a knife. And you can see that's fairly smooth, no tatty edges. It does create a bit of a waste, lots of little flecks of foam. Bit of a messy project when you do it with a knife, which is why I prefer to use a foam cutter. So the wire cutter that I'm using, I did a review of it a few weeks ago. It only takes about 20 to 30 seconds to heat up. So again, being careful not to burn myself with the wire, I will just pull it through at about a 45-degree angle. I'll work the way up and down the wire, because as it cuts, obviously the wire cools down and cuts less efficiently. So I'll work the bow up and down. And there, done pretty much. I'm going to smooth out that little kink there where I don't you can see that, where I sort of wobbled a little bit. So I'll just slice those bits out, take another bit out there. This is only going to show all when I've sanded it. I think that just creates a slightly more interesting looking shaped hill when you've done a little bit of fiddling like that. And as I say, you can see it's a nice smooth cut, very quick. The bow is very fast. I usually wipe the bow afterwards to get any material off of it, and then obviously turn it off and give it a few minutes to cool down. And again, a little bit of waste, but a little bit cleaner and tidier than using the knife. And now all I'm going to do, now that I've got my basic shape with my beveled edges all the way around, I'm just going to sand the top to smooth off that sharp edge there, because I don't like that. So now I'll just work the edges. Bit noisy this. Creates a lot of dust, so you might want to do this out in the garden, but the weather's a little bit inclement today, so I'm going to do this inside. Now I'm using quite thick, quite coarse sandpaper, but to be honest, smoother sandpaper will do the job just as well, just takes a little bit longer. There you go. Now you can see it's a little bit rough because that coarse sandpaper has sort of ripped it a little bit, but it doesn't matter. When you've covered it in glue and flocked it, you're not going to see any of that. I'll get the Hoover out now, have a quick clean up, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So the next stage is this needs to be primed just to seal the surface, and for that I use a cheap Art Shop acrylic. Couple of pound for this colour, this burnt umber. It goes on lovely and thick, really cheap, and very nice primer colour really for this sort of thing. I don't want to use my expensive acrylics to prime some heels with, and this goes on lovely. And you don't need to see me painting this stuff on with my big brush. So in good Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier. And you can see that it's a lovely solid colour. It doesn't wash out or anything like that. It goes on nice and thick and solid, and you leave it overnight to dry. It doesn't really soak into the foam, it just coats it really nice, and that's all ready now to be static grassed. I use quite a good quality PVA. I actually use a wood PVA, so it's a little bit thick for painting over the surface of these heels, so I just add a little bit of water just to make it a little bit runnier. It's probably a tad too runny at this stage, but you know, give it a good mix, and then I just paint that liberally over the surface of the heel. And then I'm going to put some static grass on. Now the stuff that I use is I actually got some autumn mix and spring mix and mixed it together basically, because it's just a colour I like, and I will just sprinkle it on from height, just so that it goes on fairly even. Now I'm actually running out. I've used quite a lot in the last few days, so I'm going to be ordering some more after I've done this video. And you see I put another board down because that way I can pick this up and save any of the stuff that comes off. I need to make the most. Press that down in it, give it a shake, take off any lumps, because sometimes I get some lumps now, and there you have it. Now that I'll leave that to dry a good few hours, and you can just see the umber underneath the grass, but I think it comes out really nice. I've done all my heels like this, and as I say, that looks really good. I mean, you'd pay a couple of quid for that if you was buying that commercially, probably more to be honest. I've made all of my heels for easily under £30. Well, I think you'll agree that that build couldn't be much simpler. Most people would be able to cope with that, and the tools and the materials are pretty basic. As I say, I've now done an accurate top-up, and I've made all of my heels for £30. So I couldn't have bought anything similar for anywhere near the price. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and of course if you did, please like, subscribe and share. So until next time, get as many games in as you can, stay safe, and of course keep rolling high.